Jay Bob, and welcome everybody. We're here with Nick Principe, who's going to share Bob is Kindness with us. And that's his title that he chose, and I think it's very sweet. And Nick, we talked yesterday about some things that you wanted to, or you were thinking of bringing up for today. So, do you know where do you think you'd like to start?
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is to say hello to everybody and to wish everybody an early Happy Silence Day. This is major, of course, the 100th anniversary. So, so the first thing I'd like to open with, I don't know if everybody gets it, but there is a newsletter from Maribad called In His Service. Is everybody, and I just got it maybe a week ago, has everybody gotten that?
Yeah, I get it.
Me too.
Okay. So there are a couple of things in there that really struck me. The first um, is the opening comment from Fallu, who is now the chairman, and he talks about patience. And this to me has been something I've battled with my whole life. As a matter of fact, Erich told me very, very early on that that was something I needed to work on is patience, because everything always came very quick to me, and not in ways that were always good. I would always have a sharp comment. I always had something, but I was also, I had lots of different skills. I was successful in many different endeavors. So I would be very impatient with anybody who, I thought was sort of dragging the heels. And so this, I think, starts with the second paragraph from Fallu. Patience is the most difficult thing in life. And once this is mastered, man will become master of all difficulties. Patience, in other words, may be called the power of endurance during the absence of the desired things or conditions. They say death is the worst thing in life, but in point of fact, patience is often worse than death. One would prefer death to patience when patience is severely tried. Patience is a life power. It is a spiritual power and the greatest virtue that one can have, for it is the cross, and on this the patient one is crucified. And further on, he relates this story, and of course, you'll have this in print. It's in 1967. His mom, Rhoda, Baba asked her to say aloud the following lines in Gujarati. I'm not going to attempt that, but the English, which is there from Baba: laugh, play, eat, drink, sleep well, get up well, live harmoniously, do not quarrel, and keep taking Baba's name.
Nick, what was the name of the publication?
This is In His Service. I'll hold it up for you.
And it's not digital, it's all paper?
It is digital too.
And how do you get on it?
I forget. Martha, do you remember? Martha, Ron, do either of you know how to subscribe?
I've been getting it for so long, I don't even know
Me too.
how it happened. But Diane, I'll look through this. Maybe it's in here and then I'll text it to you. Maybe it's in this paper somewhere. You know what I mean?
have it too.
You could forward your email on, forward the email, or
She has a paper copy.
Okay, if I can find the digital copy, I'll send
thank
it.
you.
Oh,
Thank you
digital.
so much. I'll go back and find.
Yeah, it's I think it's only maybe quarterly. I think it's not very frequent,
Not,
but when
no, it's
when
not.
it comes out, it's always it's always very beautiful. So that was
Oh, I think
that,
it's Tavern Talk. Doesn't Tavern Talk send it out?
it could be, I don't know. I
Okay,
don't have the envelope with me.
okay.
I wanted to comment on the patience thing because right before I heard about Baba, so we're going back like 50 plus years ago, I read something. I thought it was actually in the Sermon on the Mount, um, but I just looked it up, and this was really a savior for me because patience was something I struggled with for quite a long time after. And I was struggling at the time. But when I read this, it really helped me to not really have a complete nervous breakdown. And so I'm looking at Luke 21:19-21 or something like that. King James Version says, "In your patience, possess ye your souls."
Mm,
So it's pretty important.
that's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So as I was discussing this with my daughter, who was just here, one of the things that we chatted about is a story that Bao told about his lack of patience, that he did not even realize how difficult it was for him. So he told this story, and I think it's been published, so I'm not the only repository of this story. But they were in Guru Prasad, and Bao had night watch duty. And then during the day, he would have correspondence to tend to. He had the other task that Baba would ask him to do. So he finished his nighttime shift, whatever those hours were, and he went back to his room to try and grab a couple of hours of sleep so he could start working on the assignments that Baba had given him. And Bao said he no sooner laid down than somebody came and said, Baba wants you to come now. So Bao said he immediately got up and went, and Baba gestured. He was in Mandali Hall with others because now it's morning, you see, because he's finished night watch. So now Baba's talking to the other Mandali, whatever is going on. And he just gestures to Bao to have a seat on the side there. There's a chair there. So Bao's sitting there, and people were coming in for Baba's darshan and other people that Baba had sent for, family members, whoever it was, the twins, whoever would come to visit. And he said every time somebody would leave, he started to get up, figuring Baba would call him now. Instead, Baba would just gesture, no, wait, wait. And somebody else would come. And Bao said he got so angry, he got so upset inwardly. And finally, Baba called him and asked how he was. And of course, he blurted out. He said, "Baba, I'm just very upset." And Baba asked him why. He said, "Well, you've given me so much to do. I haven't had any sleep, and you have me sitting here doing nothing." And Baba told him, he said, "You think you're doing nothing?" He said, "Waiting for me is the most important thing you can do." So that's real patience. And this is somebody who'd been with Baba for years, and he said he hadn't realized how impatient he was. So, of course, Baba always brings those things out in us, and it's one of the reasons why I'm happy about getting what I call severely old, because now patience is automatic. You know, we have different words for it. You call it tired or retired, but it's patience is forced on me now. Even if yeah, yes.
Nick, I think I've heard that told by someone else. I don't know why. Yeah, anyway, and I think that it was framed in these words that the most important thing was waiting for his call. And
Yes.
I just thought that was so beautiful, just as you've
Yeah.
said.
Yeah,
I think it was Rhoda Dubois, and I don't know why, but it's just what comes to my mind.
yeah, yeah. You know, did you know Rhoda Dubois?
Yeah,
You know about the son that they lost?
yeah,
Yeah, that was a beautiful, beautiful story. I happened to be in I heard that story from them, from Adi and Rhoda
yeah,
in Matsari's kitchen
yeah.
when they told that story about their son. So quite beautiful. Well, even just thinking about that carries me right back to Mansari's kitchen with her in that sling chair and Rhoda and Adi. As a matter of fact, you may probably have heard this too. Um, they were living in, was it Pakistan? Maybe they weren't close to where Baba was, and Baba sent a message to them, cable, whatever the means was, letter, I don't know. He said, just as soon as you take care of your responsibilities, you come immediately to see me. And so Adi, took care of his business responsibilities. He did everything he had to do. But Rhoda had some problem arranging, I think, childcare for the children. So Adi left and went to Baba. And Rhoda had to wait until she finished her responsibilities. And I remember one Westerner who was in the kitchen there saying, "Oh, that's terrible. He left without you." And she said, "Oh, no, my dear." She said, "When it comes to Baba, it's every man for himself." You know, it's one of the wonders of the delightful things for me about these talks is that it brings up these kind of memories, these episodes that I was very, very fortunate uh, to be able to be there to meet. I mean, every week that goes by, I make it a point on a particular day, a particular time. I thank Baba for just not only allowing me to know about him, but allowing me to meet, especially Mara and Mani and the other Mandali. Uh, and now, of course, and I know many of you have also, and there are people coming along now who have no idea who these people were and the wealth of information about Baba that they had, the depth of their love and obedience to Baba was just something one had. I imagine it's like one has to experience Baba to know who Baba is. One has to experience being with the Mandali to understand what they really were like. You know, just the marvelous, marvelous people. And my daughter, as a matter of fact, she grew up with Baba. Bao was her surrogate grandfather because her grandfathers died early. Her mother's father she never met. He died before she was born. My father died when she was about 3. So Bao became her surrogate grandfather because his first trip to the West, Marie was 6 years old. Well, actually, her mother was pregnant with her the first time Bao came. And then, you know, over the 10 years that he came, almost I think every year. So Marie had that. But she also met Kitty and Jane Haynes and Mani and Erich and Uh, and her stories, every once in a while, she'll tell me something about her memory of one of the Mandali that just kind of floors me. You know, and for instance, I took her when we were living in Chapel Hill. Marie, we had brought Marie to meet Kitty when Marie was about 3 months old. And I have a wonderful photo of Kitty holding Marie's hands while her mother was holding her. And Kitty asked Marie, at 3 months old, she said, "Who are you?" And she was rubbing her hands. And Marie had the photo, Marie is just beaming, the recognition that was there. And we moved to we were living in Chapel Hill in North Carolina. And when we found out Kitty was dying, she was in the hospital. Marie, who then was maybe 4, she insisted we go to Myrtle Beach so that she could see Kitty. And we immediately loaded everything up in the car. We drove directly to the hospital because Marie had to see Kitty that last time. And when we were chatting about this, just the last few days, she told me she actually remembers Kitty playing with her fingers when she was 3 months old. And I think, how do you have a memory like that? You know, but that was the impact that the Mandali could have on somebody. Yeah, she's got other stories which I can't reveal because she's almost embarrassed by them. So I'll leave that to her in the future. What she wants to, what she feels like she wants to share. Does anybody have anything in particular they would like to talk about?
Well, I'm jumping in too soon. Does anybody else here have a subject? Yes, there's Diane. What is it, Diane?
Since we're on Silence Day week, I have been telling this story a lot because I need to keep processing it, but the wedding that we're going to is on Saturday, so we have to leave on Silence Day. And I do not feel comfortable being silent or using notes on international travel with all the weirdness going on. So I had heard that you could fast, but I'm a type 2 diabetic, so that's not there. And so I'm not someone who gets messages from Baba, but I got it really clearly that I should fast from being anxious, which is a really big thing for me. Apparently the past few years, I get anxious. And I realized 3 weeks ago, it was because when I traveled, once you walk through the doors, nothing is in your control. And it's the ultimate Baba letting go experience. There will be delays. You can't control anything. So anyway, there was a thing with Jeff last night where he said at the very end, does anybody have any funny faux pas, if you will, about what happened to them by accidentally breaking silence? It's very difficult for me because it's also the 100th year. I mean,
Right.
it's important, and we're not working, so we could really do silence. But anyway, I wanted to talk. You've been with Baba a lot longer than me. How you've negotiated life on Silence Day.
I love that you brought this up because Diane and I actually touched on this a little bit yesterday. To me, I mean, I only have my own perspective. I don't have any insight other than anybody else has. But I do know that Baba had said that, you know, in anything, you know, we have to remember him. That's the critical thing. That's what he wanted us to do. What I'm leading up to is, to me, there are two major phases of Baba's silence. One is external, one is internal. Baba's message to you was internal silence.
So that's no anxiety.
It's
Thank
a part of it. To me, that is the critical part. That's why there are people, when Baba said there are people who love me who don't know my name. So they're not observing silence today. Does that mean they're not lovers of God? It's because there are people around the world who are inwardly silent. I think the outward silence, it's is beautiful and definitely a discipline for us all to aspire to. But I think one has to or should broaden. We can't take Baba's message and put it into a little narrow thing, a box, and say this is what Baba meant. Adi used to say, you never say what Baba meant. You could say Baba said, but you can't say what Baba meant because he speaks from his experience. We don't have that experience. So, he said, observe. He wanted us to observe silence. And I think outward silence is critical and important. Those of us, I was a nurse. I was an emergency room nurse. There were days I just had to work. But I tried, as Erich would say, you dress your mind before you dress your body. You dress your mind with Baba's name. And then go about your day.
Jay Baba.
What you just did was such a gift to me. The peace of mind went right to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Well, you're so blessed because when you said he doesn't talk to you much, he just did. He gave you that message directly.
I certainly couldn't have come up with it myself.
Yeah.
Jay
So, Baba bless both you. Enjoy your trip. Have a wonderful vacation.
Baba.
And, when Diane and I talked about this yesterday, it even came up, should we even mention anything? Because, people have so many different views about Silence Day. And, mine may be a little bit, doesn't fit the mainstream, maybe. I don't know because I don't have much contact with anybody. So I'm thrilled to hear your experience.
We spent the weekend, the Los Angeles had our LA Sahabas, and Doreen Bonner was the guest.
Oh,
And we've seen her number of times, but I did do a story request, which was Silence Day Honeymoon.
Oh,
Which, if you haven't heard that story, it's a wonderful story
hers?
of her story, her and
Yeah,
Jake.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. When I find a link, when the LA Center comes up with the
I'll
link,
send it to you.
I'll send it to you.
Thank you. I have met her here at
What's
the
that?
center. I said I've met her here at the center.
Yeah.
And of course, the one story that really that sticks with me, and I repeat it frequently, from her is when she was a little girl, and Baba asked her, but she asked Baba about snakes and scorpions and things like that. And I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful way. When people ask me sometimes, sort of, why do we have these things in the world? If Baba's loving and kind, why do you have these things? And I relate that story.
I forgot the reason, and I just heard it, why these these sides are there.
It's life.
It's duality of life.
Hmm.
Well, what as I recall it, and to me it's such a vivid story. As I recall it, she was about 7 years old
She was.
and went to see Baba, uh, and you know, and there's video of this at 7, and here she is, this adorable little girl, long black pigtails in the back and the bow, and she's got on the the style at the time, the frilly dress with the crinolines and things. And when she
Right.
greeted Baba, and he asked her, told her how beautiful she was, and of course she's very shy and standing there, oh, and thank you, Baba, And then he asked her, "Do you have any questions for me?" And she said, "Yes, Baba." She said, and he said, "Tell me." And she said, "Well, you say God is all love." And Baba said, "Yes." And he said, "Then why are there things like spiders and snakes in the world?" And Baba said to her, he said, "Shireen," he said, "you're so beautiful. Look at how lovely you are, beautiful hair, you smile, you're so pretty." She said, "Thank you, Baba." He said, "But when you sit on the potty, you bring out that which is thinking in you." He said, "That's necessary to keep you healthy." He said, "That's why there are those things in the world. It's necessary to keep the world healthy."
Mhm.
Shitty, but
Yeah.
healthy.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
we were talking, we were talking about the fact that there were so many pictures of Baba around her house. And to think that her uncle is God is unbelievable. It's just amazing. And so I raised my hand and I said, we have a bunch of pictures all over the house of your uncle too. In fact, everywhere
Yeah.
you look.
Yeah. Baba's family. I remember hearing one time there was a time when Jal, Baba's brother Jal,
Mhm.
took a lot of verbal abuse, especially from Westerners, because, as a dear friend of mine put it, he said, Jal pushed the money button on Westerners because Jal would ask for people to bring things, he would ask them for money, and a lot of people thought that was inappropriate for God's brother to do that. But it's if anybody ever spent any time with Jal, he didn't even own a belt. He had a rope to tie his pants up. That was, and Baba, he was Baba's bag man. In the New York bookies jargon, when Baba would ask, Andra, places like that, for donations, they could for work that he had to do, he would send Jal to go get the money. And Jal told me that there were times he'd be riding on the train and buses with a suitcase with 40, 50,000 rupees, just enormous amount of money, especially in those days in the 30s and 40s. But, he was, but Westerners, but Baba had said, "Don't ever criticize my family," he said, "because you have no idea what they've gone through in order to be born in my family."
Mm.
So, and yeah, they were all, and we're fortunate because we still have some of them alive. The twins, of course, are still alive, and they're and Shireen, and I suppose there may even, I'm not sure if there are others. Yes, there are.
Dara.
Dara, of course. Yeah, and also I'm thinking of Rustam and Zorab's children,
Mhm.
who are also now blood descendants of Baba.
And Shireen has a daughter, and
Yeah,
of
yeah,
course,
so,
Sarah had-
Marwan,
the
yeah.
rest
So we're blessed to have them on the planet now. It's one of the things that gives me hope for the future. To think that Baba's not going to, when people think it's so, the end time and all that, destruction of the world and all that. I think, nah, not as long as his family's still around.
Mm.
I actually had a funny exchange with Bao one time in India. We were having dinner. There was a Chinese restaurant, and we were upstairs. There might have been about a dozen people there. And, people were, some people were always wanting to press Bao for very serious, what did Baba mean about this and what about that? And, 3/4 of the world being destroyed and all that. And, that, and even though Bao was patient and explained, answered all those questions, I used to sit there and think, my God, let the man enjoy his meal, at least, wait till after dinner. So somebody asked him one time about Mahapralaya, destruction of the universe. And I was sitting next to Bao. Bao turned, he looked at me. He said, Nick, what do you think about Mahapralaya? I said, well, actually, if Mahapralaya is going to happen, I want to hurry up and finish my meal because I don't want to come back to leftovers. And he just got the biggest kick out of that, but it was the end of the Mahapralaya question. It's just eat, enjoy.
Just be
We're here to have,
present. Oops.
pardon? I'm
Just
sorry.
be present. Be in the here and now.
Yeah. Let him worry. Let Papa worry about all that stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not our business. It's like you on your trip. He's looking after you. So
Thank you.
whatever happens, so what?
Mm.
Because today, tomorrow, we're going to die anyway, and then you come back and have another body. So I'm kind of at this point now in my 80s. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think because even though this body has served me well, now I'm just dragging my heels. So
Mm.
I wouldn't mind coming back. Next birth, I want to be 6'4". I want to have blonde hair, blue eyes. I don't care, male or female. If I'm female, I'll be an Amazon.
There's a fellow who, a young man who is part of the LA, center, and the kids do so much. I mean, they're in their 20s and 30s, you think, but
Yeah.
they do so much work around the center. And this one fellow's name is Skylar, and he's over 6'4". And it's
Uh,
like he's reaching for the sky. And so yesterday, when they put up the flag, he literally used his height to just put the flag into the little.
Flagpole.
yeah, my one of my burning questions, if I get to ask Baba anything, I'm curious as to why he built my ass so close to the ground. because I've got brush marks on my behind from walking in it, just dragging my. Both my brothers were well over 6 feet. I'm
Unreal.
How tall are you, Nick?
well in my mind I'm 6'4", but I'm probably 5'8".
Mhm.
That's what I am.
Mhm.
Yeah, but both my brothers were well over 6 feet, and one was 6'4", the other 6'2".
That's a
But
great conversation to have on one of these Baba groups. If you had one question asked Baba,
What would it be?
what would it be?
also, we have to have a joke for Baba. You know about that. Got to have a
Mhm.
joke ready.
Okay.
I think I heard that Baba was 5'8". Is that something
Yeah,
you? Yeah.
Baba was about 5'8". As a matter of fact, which you just remind me of, Baba was in seclusion at Marazad. There was a tailor who went to Marazad. He was one of the Mandali who ever greeted him. And he asked if he could see Baba because he wanted to make Baba a coat. And they told him, no, Baba's not seeing anybody who's in seclusion. And the tailor said, please, if you ask Baba I don't want to disturb him. I don't even have to measure him. He said, I've been a tailor for however many years he was, 30, 40 years. He said, if I can just see Baba from a distance, I'll be able to make a coat for him. And they relayed the message to Baba, and Baba consented. And Baba came out on the veranda. I think he was in the house, where he stayed in that bedroom there. He was doing seclusion there. And this fellow at it was permitted quite a distance away. And he looked, he stared at Baba, and Baba just stood there. And then the fellow left, and he open hands thanked Baba. And I remember Erich telling the story, and then the fellow came back. It might have been a week or two later, and he had the box, and it was the coat he had made for Baba. And Baba had finished his seclusion, and Baba had the fellow brought to him, and they Baba put the jacket on, and Erich said the sleeves were this much too long. It was down almost to Baba's knees. He said the shoulders were and the tailor, when Baba put it on, he said it was like a child putting on his father's coat. And the tailor said, I can't believe it. He said, I've been doing this work for so many years, but that's how big he looked to Baba. And what really struck me about that memory is there was some years ago, perhaps even 10 or 15 years ago, the twins were at the center. Now, the twins, we're about the same height. They may be an inch taller than I am. They were on the stage, both of them doing their, singing songs, telling Baba stories. When they came off the stage, I looked at them and they looked like they were 6'4", 6'5". They looked giant. And I realized right then that that's Baba, the power that exudes from, it was what exuded from Baba himself, but with those who are also in his service. There's a story about Adi one time going to Sing Sing prison in New York. There was a Baba lover who was incarcerated there. He had got caught up in a fraudulent stock scam, and he took the blame for it. And Adi went to see him at the prison. And for those of you who knew Adi, he was an imposing figure. And anyway, this fellow who's a timid guy from New Jersey, I forget his name. I don't even know if he's still alive.
Don Euchre. Don
Don
Euchre.
Euchre,
Yeah.
yes. I heard the story from Frank Parker, who was good friends with Don Euchre. And he was a little frightened about being in prison because, you hear all these stories about, if people are weak, they get taken advantage of. Anyway, Don told Frank that after Adi came, he said the other prisoners, they would offer him cigarettes. They call him sir. He said they were convinced that Don was part of a mafia family, that Adi was part of a mafia family. I mean, that was how imposing a figure he was. And I think they could turn it on and off, or Baba would do that with them if they were doing work for him.
I heard this story from Don, and Don said that one of his fellow inmates said, that man has power. He said,
Yeah. Is Don still alive? Do you know?
no.
You don't know, or no, he's not alive?
He's not alive. No, he's passed. No, he went before Margaret.
Yeah. So.
Can I offer an anecdote,
Sure.
which applies to some of the things that were said earlier in the talk? Although I'm not going to tie them together, let's just see, maybe people will tie it together. But before I tell that anecdote, I just wanted to say that Mansari, also, I think it was Mansari, said that one time she looked at Baba, and Baba looked so small she thought she could put him in her pocket. So it was just the opposite. He could look any way that was for somebody to experience him. Anyhow, the anecdote that came to mind, which was one of my most powerful experiences. In one of my trips to India, I can't remember now if it was in 79 or 92, but it was one of those times I was sitting in Mandali Hall, and Eric had introduced a woman from Pakistan. And he asked her to give a talk that she had given in a school gymnasium. And it was a talk about Baba that somebody had invited her to give. And she was reading it off a piece of paper. And in my mind, I was thinking, I've come all the way to India to meet these people that were with Baba and served Baba, and directly and hear from them. And I was thinking, this seems pretty removed from that type of intimacy, or I don't know, intimacy is not the right word, but that closeness to Baba. And I was thinking, what is she gonna say? I mean, I was kind of not impressed initially, but then she got to a point where she told this story of Baba in the New Life, where he helped a family that had been wealthy and had become poor. And I remembered reading that story in one of the books, maybe more than once. And I was thinking, yeah, it's a great story. And I was listening to it, her reading it off a sheet of paper, and it touched me so profoundly that I was shocked how the feelings that I was having. It was like that was the strongest feelings I had about Baba's love while I was in India. It was just that powerful. But I was also dumbfounded that it was coming from somebody reading it off a piece of paper, a story that I had already heard. It seemed very removed. And I said, Baba, how is this possible? And I really feel that Baba impressed upon me that he could come through it as strong as he wants through any layers of what would seem to be removed from him. But that's an illusion. He said, I can come through anything and touch a heart. As long as if you need to have your heart touched, he's going to do it, and it'll happen without it being something that we would identify as being special.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Oh, go
No,
ahead.
I just said thank you. I was just thanking Ron.
Okay. We have a young fellow that's living upstairs. We have a upstairs apartment over our house, and he's a Baba person. And we brought out the Hafiz cards today. He wanted if we could read, choose a Hafiz. And we each got, the three of us got messages that that were from Baba. We really needed to hear what they had to say. It was so right on. It was amazing. So I hear what you're saying, Ron. And what you said, Nick. It's the truth. We get it from wherever we need to get it, but we still get Baba. Blessed be.
Receptivity is a good important quality to have around Baba.
I have that feeling too, Ron. Also in terms of healing, physical healing, and then other kinds of healing. Whatever medium he wants to use, that's the one you're going to hear it. He will use whatever when it's time to be healed, and he's delivering it.
Yeah.
So has anybody had the opportunity to read the first volume of Devana's book about Erich?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Have you seen or read any of the first volume of Devana's book about Erich?
Yeah, I have.
I have.
Great book. I'm looking forward to volume 2.
So the reason why I bring that up is what this conversation reminds me of is Erich talked about one of the stories that Devana relates Erich talked about before, in the very early days, and he was just a schoolboy, and Baba would visit his parents' home. There was a man who would come to the house and just be fed and instructed his mother to bathe him and rub butter on his body. And Erich kind of wondered, of course, who this man was. And later on, it was revealed to him, Baba told him that this man was a Jivan Mukta. And what that is a somebody who has attained perfection, but has no responsibility. And it's apparently one of the most desirable states to be in, to be a perfect master and not have any responsibility. I thought, wow, I wonder if I can apply for that. But, but what struck me with that is Erich had at one point, and I'd have to go back and reread it all, but this fellow was talking about telling Erich one time he had just been to America, and Erich said, "Wait, how have you been to America? You were here." And he said, "No, there's no difference. There's no difference." He said, "I can be there, I can be here." Everything he looked at, he said, was God, was Baba. And he would say, "I'm the same as him." And so I think that's why, at some point in our personal, sort of closeness as we hopefully get closer to Baba, we don't need all the normal external things for him to communicate with us. He just, he wants you to do something, you just do it.
Mhm.
Erich asked me one time, he said, "Where do you think thoughts come from? You think that's some outside force?"
Mhm.
It's just, all Baba's got to do is plant an idea, and you think, "Oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that." And no, you're not. It's sometimes I had an experience in India at the Samadhi, and I really felt like I was a puppet on a string.
That's
Yeah.
what we felt like when we met. Somebody was saying in one of the discussions the other night, how do you know when it's intuition, i.e. Baba, or your ego?
Well, I think you're asking the wrong person about that, because that's a struggle for all of us. I my guess is that if we have surrendered to Baba, then he's responsible for us. So even if we make mistakes, and whether it's ego or whatever one wants to call it, he is still responsible for us. There's a story that I think Mansari told a story that she was sitting in Mandali Hall, and there was somebody sitting next to her, another woman. It might have been, I don't know who it was. Who it was doesn't matter. But Baba said, as long as you remember me, you can do anything. And this person said to Mansari, "Baba shouldn't say that." And because then people will do anything and then say, "Well, it's okay because I'm remembering Baba." And immediately Baba snapped his fingers, pointed to Mansari, and told her to stand up. He said, and he asked her, he said, "What did she say to you?" And she said, "Baba, she said you shouldn't say that." And Baba asked the woman, "Why shouldn't I say that?" And she said, "Because then people would commit crimes. They go rob a bank." And Baba said, "Yes, but if they remember me, it's still okay."
Wow.
So I think here's where the point is. To me, this is where the point is. try to say Baba and try to say anything vile at the same time.
Mhm.
You can't. You can't. You can't say black and white at the same time. One has got to be before or after the other. You can say white and black, black and white, but there's no, you just garble. That's so when we remember Baba, it's not a question of just remembering him once and then going about our business and doing evil things. It's the constant, the remembrance or the effort to remember him constantly so that he becomes, as he said, like your own breath. Diane, I know we're getting close to closing time. How much time do you?
You're muted.
Oh,
I muted?
No, no,
Me, I
Diane.
was,
Oh,
I was
Diane.
mute. Thank you, thank you. We just have very few minutes left, and I think it would be good for us to start closing because the next program should be allowed to start on
Yes,
time.
sure, absolutely.
So,
Baba was very timely if I know my stories right.
yeah, we've
Yes,
really had such lovely conversation today.
This was such a gift.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Baba.
Thank you, all of you.
thank you,
Very
everybody.
nice.
It's been delightful. I've enjoyed,
Beautiful.
this has been one of my highlights out of all of these. This has been also to me the most touching. Thank you. Because I sometimes think, oh my goodness, another one. Are people even interested
oh my
in,
goodness.
in
Yes,
conversation? So I'm thrilled that I can sort of relate stories that have some meaning and to encourage other people to do the same. Search your memory bank, share some of those stories because they're going to get lost. I started jotting them down first, and then I would go back and rehearse them almost the way a singer would rehearse a song. If you have an episode, a memory, either do it on a cassette tape. I have tapes, I've recorded things, um, or I used to write them down. And then, after a while, it becomes second nature to just share it. So, Baba bless everybody, and happy Silence Day again.
thank you again, Nick. Jay,
Inter-
My pleasure.
Baba.
Jai Baba Dev. Bye.
Jay,
Been wonderful.
Hey, Baba, Nick.
Jai Baba.